my stance as plainly as I possibly can that a moral fact means, to me, a stance-dependent rational derivative. So any person who asks the question, how do mind-independent or stance-independent moral facts exist, is tantamount to asking me, how does 2 plus 2 not equal 4? I'm not going to entertain the question.
Can I jump in here? I think I might be able to help.
Okay, go ahead, Rodrigo.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that there is a proposition in question. The proposition is moral facts are stance dependent. One of you has the view that moral facts are stance dependent. The other has the view that moral facts are not stance dependent.
No, he's arguing devil's advocate.
Well, it may be for the devil or for Thomas More or God himself, but that's the proposition. Okay, and you have opposing positions with respect to that proposition. Additionally, there's a dispute as to whether the proposition is even coherent in either its positive or its negative form. I hear one of you saying that both the positive and the negative form are coherent. I hear the other saying that only the negative form is coherent, the negative form being moral facts, or rather, sorry, the positive form. Moral facts are stance dependent being coherent, and that moral facts not being stance dependent is incoherent. But here's the problem. The only way for two propositions to be such that one is coherent and the other is not coherent, when one is a formal negation of the other, is if formal negation itself is incoherent. That is, you would have to not understand the meaning of the word no or not. Because if snow is white is coherent, then snow is not white is coherent. Now, of course, if you believe snow is white, you'll believe it is false that snow is not white. And you could say that. You could say that it is false, that moral facts are stance independent. But to say that it is incoherent, that moral facts are stance independent, while maintaining that it is coherent, that moral facts are stance dependent, would require that negation itself is incoherent. And perhaps you think that,
No.
but I doubt that.
I don't think he's using coherent or incoherent in the sense of it being meaningless. I thought he was saying
Intelligible is what I heard.
given the way that
Given the way he interprets
there were two but there were both things were brought up in the course of what Xerxes was saying, I think. So on one hand he was saying he's understanding moral facts like by definition to be something stance dependent. And so if you say that moral facts or something stance independent, that's incoherent in the contradictory sense on his view.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. But
not in the sense that.
That's
not
fine.
in the sense that.
But the thing is that contradictions, self-contradictions, such as one equals two. Hold on.
Yeah.
1 equals 2 are not unintelligible.
Right. I don't think he said anything like that.
Actually, I'm pretty sure I remember hearing unintelligible means
yes,
nothing
he said
to me.
Yes, when he said
it was.
Yeah, no,
he said it was both unintelligible and incoherent. So at one point.
No. Yeah, well.
What do you mean?
Maybe I'm being overly charitable. The way I heard it.
Is fine. But if
he said that it was
incoherent. This is the way I heard it. Yes.
No,
it doesn't matter.
Detroyer, stop.
If I could express it.
He said that it was incoherent in the sense that
yes.
it contained a conjunction of two inconsistent propositions, not just that it was meaningless or non-cognitive to him.
He didn't. I don't think he said of the same statement as both meaningless and contradictory.
That's fine. But it doesn't make any difference because
what I thought he said was meaningless, or he didn't understand the meaning of, is when if someone were using the word moral in another way than what he meant, he thought it was either meaningless or he just didn't know what was being meant.
I get that. I understood the point.
I can speak for myself and clarify.
Yeah.
Let me just add one more bit, and then I want to hear. So, if we do choose to be more charitable and suppose that it isn't a claim about its meaninglessness, but rather its self-contradictoriness, then the burden is to show where the contradiction is. If instead the third option
was trivial,
is not so much that it is meaning.
That was already done.
Sorry?
That was already done.
Well, I hadn't heard it. Maybe it could be said again.
I heard it. I can repeat it in a sentence if you want.
Perhaps
Oh,
you could. But the third option, and I'd like to get it out, and then I'm done. The third option would be not to say that it's meaningless or that it's self-contradictory, but that it has no meaning to the hearer. That is, no meaning to King, which is not a claim that it has no meaning to anyone else, only that he doesn't understand it. Those are the three options that I can see, but none of them work, because if it's a matter of self-contradiction, you have to show the argument. Of course, maybe you have it ready, and I'm ready to hear it. If it's about meaninglessness, you can't deny meaninglessness to one and not the negation. And if it's about personal meaning, then you're left with an inexplicable discourse of people talking to each other that you're not able to understand, which is an embarrassment, if not a self-contradiction. So what is the argument then that it is self-contradictory?
Yeah, so the argument there was self-contradictory, which is like really obvious. He said it quite plainly, which is that given how he's understanding moral as being something essentially stance dependent, it's a contradiction to suppose that something is both stance dependent and stance independent. Okay, that's the contradiction. Now you can say, oh, but I'm not using it in that way. That's the sense that he said, I don't understand, I don't know what's being meant, and that's fine. I would say the same thing.
Okay, no, it's not fine, and here's
Imagine
why.
that. It's so fucking easy. It's so fucking easy to pick up what I'm
I
saying there
actually,
that he
I
did
actually
it
pretty much
perfectly.
agreed with everything he said.
He
Okay,
did it
so
perfectly.
that's
He
good. So that's
perfectly
good. You
said what
have
I was saying.
good.
It's
That's good.
meaningless
So you have
because no, I don't derive any meaning from moral facts or stance independent.
all right.
But when
That's
you
a
say
oh,
meaningless
meaningless,
statement to me.
you don't necessarily want to
oh,
say that someone else doesn't mean something by it.
Okay.
Right? You just
So
don't
What
in
know
I'm
what's
fact,
saying is
being
that it's
meant.
meaningless to
oh,
me.
Either, as
King.
far as you know, something might be meant by it, but
okay.
you don't know if something's meant by it or what is meant by it. Right? I mean, that's what I would say anyway.
Which is it now? Now you're backing off. So is it meaningful to you or not?
Is this a question to me?
Well,
So,
since you're agreeing with each other, I suppose it could be to both of you.
I mean, do you find the
In
concept of
general, in
dependent
general, when someone says,
moral
"Yeah,"
fact meaningful or not?
well, if there might be versions of various things that might be meant by it that I do find meaningful. So in the sense that if you're using it as I might use the word moral facts, I find that meaningful, if contradictory.
Okay,
But
but when you
and there's other
interpret
senses that I
someone,
might understand.
but when you interpret
Yeah,
someone,
when I
oh,
for most
hold,
realists, quote unquote, who use the term, I don't know what they mean. That's
well,
correct.
hold on, hold, 1 second, 1 second, please. When you interpret someone, should you not be concerned with what they mean, as opposed to what you mean when you use the words? After all, you're not the ones using them.
Yes.
So what does
Why
it
would
matter
I
if
didn't
what? So follow up. What does it matter if when you use the word, it has the meaning of stance dependence? When what you're trying to
because
do is
I'm
interpret. What's it? 1 second. When what you're trying to do is interpret what someone else means. When the speaker means that it is stance independent.
look. No, it's not that they mean that a stance independent. I was just making a point that people, when they use the word, not just myself but others, mean different things, and I was just making the point that on some of the things they might mean, I understand that, and some of them I don't. Um, for most realists, probably I don't understand it.
Right, but the problem is
I'm
that if what passes from
okay.
understanding to not understanding is merely the negation of one predicate, then there would
No,
have to be a
no, that's still
Oh my
not
god.
correct.
Why are we
I don't know
well
why you're
debating
then
this
well
rehashing
bullshit?
then
that. That
This
was
is so
already
the
boring.
reason
This is
addressed.
the most boring
well I'm
conversation
restating
ever.
it because I'm hearing you say that you understand when people use the words morality as stance dependent, but you don't understand when they use it as stance independent, and the only difference between them is the negation
No,
here in the
wrong,
prefix
wrong. They're
in.
using an
Okay,
entirely different word. It's the fact that it's the sound moral both times, is just an accident, really.
it's not the same
They're
word.
using a completely different word. It's not the same
It's just
word
it
in the
sounds the
sense.
same. It's spelled the same history, but
Yes,
different word. Is that it?
no, yes, completely different
Okay.
meanings. I don't know what they mean by
All
it.
right. All right. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I don't know what they mean by
So
it
It,
either.
it
different
might,
word.
it might,
Okay.
yeah. For me, it
And
might
it
as well
wasn't
just be glurb glurb. It's I don't know what it means.
it was never difficult for me to explain that. I literally do not know what it means to say that moral facts or moral propositions are stance independent. I don't know
I
what
know what
fucking
it
meaning
means.
moral
I know what it
facts in
means
that
if they
context.
if they're using it the way I would use it, but I figure they're not out of charity, saying something
Yeah,
so
if
Well,
plainly
if if they're
contradictory,
using it the way
the
that I'm using,
right?
then it's internally contradictory. But if they're not
yeah.
Right,
using it
but
the way that I'm using it,
obviously they're
I don't
not
Yeah,
have a
you
because
problem
should
at
I
all.
don't think
do.
they're not plainly
You
contradicting
should.
themselves.
The
I
problem
assume.
is that
You,
if
Then
you
I don't
take
know what
other
they mean.
people who disagree with you to be using the words that you use in order to disagree with you as homonyms that are merely accidentally in the discourse, then
Hmm.
you basically can never be proven wrong because you could just take your words to have as their meaning that you'd be right. And what's the point in arguing with that? You tell me.
What? That is such a naive
What's the point
take,
in
right? Like
arguing? I don't.
I can have a similar
I'm telling you a fact of how I use the words, there's other ways I might use them, and there's other ways I might
You
understand the
Yeah,
use
I'm
of
not
them.
he
disputing. I'm
already
not disputing
I
admitted.
how
don't
you
care.
use words. That's not the
Look,
issue.
he already
The
Okay,
point is
admitted.
whether you're able to understand how other people use the words
He
when it's different
already.
from how you
I've
do.
already granted that I
He
don't.
already. Yeah, he
But
already
that, but it,
granted that.
but that's not sufficient, because
Okay.
the only way you can fail to understand how others use the words is either that they are using it in different ways, that for
Which they
which
are.
there's a historical accident that they happen to be spelled and sound the same, or they're
Of
using it in the
course.
same way but to disagree with you, which is what's actually occurring.
I mean,
So
look,
if
this
it's in
is fine
fact
and
Obviously,
if
they're
it's
using it in a different
if
way.
Rodrigo.
I
I've already.
This is easy.
As far as I'm concerned, they're using it in a radically different way.
unfortunately, it doesn't
That's
matter what your concern is. They're not using it in a different way, and you can't establish that fact by merely declaring it to be so.
Of course they're using it a different way, because if they
Hold
weren't
on. Let
using it in
me.
a different way, they'd be plainly contradicting themselves. And I don't think they
This
are.
is this is easy to clear up with a simple analogy. So in the modern world, in the 21st century, we use the word gay to describe a homosexual man normally, right? But if you go back to the 1950s, the word gay meant to say happy, right? So you could make the statement, a gay person is straight, and in the modern world that would be perceived as an innate contradiction, but back then it could have been easily understood as a happy person is straight or a happy person is heterosexual. So if you're using the word gay to mean a homosexual man, then the statement a gay man is heterosexual is an internal contradiction. So we would have to assume, if I mean by the word gay somebody who is homosexual, and somebody told me a gay man is heterosexual, I would have to assume they mean something else by the word gay, at which point I would ask them, what do you mean by gay? Because I'm not going to just immediately assume they're intentionally contradicting themselves. And if they told me, well, what I mean by gay is happy, well, then the statement, a gay person is heterosexual, is perfectly sound and intelligible, and I understand what they mean by that.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean,
Are you
and
gonna say something, Jack?
No, I was just
examples
saying
of
like Billy.
so it's that's a good example of a homonym, and it's
What?
very helpful, because if the claim here is that moral is a homonym, then we can put that to the test. If in fact it is a homonym, then we ought to be able to do much of what we do with the word gay, or the two words gay. So gay can be translated into other languages. And when it is translated into other languages, we must be mindful of which of the two words is in play. If we're talking about being glad, we would translate it one way. If we're talking about
Yeah, but
homosexual, we would
Rodrigo, the
translate.
problem
Well, hold
here
on a
is,
second.
for
Let me
me
finish.
and maybe for
Please, let me finish.
friction
Let me
as
finish.
well.
Please, let me finish. If we mean homosexual, we translate it in a different way. However, moral doesn't have that characteristic. We don't find ourselves translating it differently into different languages depending on context. Additionally, if it truly is a homonym, we should be able to do
This
what
is
we do
just
with the word.
plainly
Let me
wrong.
finish.
But
Yeah,
I'll
We
let you
should be able.
I would completely
We
disagree
should
with
be
that,
able to do.
Rodrigo.
You don't have to agree. You have to wait and finish for me to finish. We should be able to do with the word gay is use both senses, since they are two homonyms in description of the same entity. For example, if you have a homosexual who is not glad, you could say he is a gay who is not gay, and that would be perfectly coherent. But there is no way to do that with the alleged the homonyms of moral.
Yeah,
So
the reason why is because the
it's
people
just
who
it's
believe
just
in the
Yeah,
alternate
I think
definition of
there
moral
is,
that
if
doesn't map
both
to
of
my
them are
own.
meaningful. I don't know how to use it in the other
but that's
sense,
just my
but
point. If you
if
can't make the
presumably
case,
something is meant by it,
that's just the
but
point.
that's just
If
commenting that I don't know what's meant by it.
no, that's
Presumably, if
fine. That's
something
fine.
is
I'm
meant
not.
by it and someone does know what it means, then they'd be able to say that.
That's fine, but you haven't yet established that you don't know what you mean. That is a claim that I find indefensible, because you haven't given any
That I
reason to
don't know what
support.
they mean.
Excuse me.
What?
Yes,
Now
yes.
he's
Let me
just calling us
finish. Let me
liars.
finish. Let
Okay,
me
That's
whatever.
just
finish.
a
Let me
comment on my
finish.
understanding of what they're expressing. I don't know
Let
what
me
they're
finish.
expressing.
Let me finish. I'm not saying you're a liar. If I were to say that,
Okay.
I would use that word. What I am saying is that you may be under the false impression, okay? You may be mistaken about whether or not you actually know how the word is being used by people who disagree with you. After all, if you
How
don't
is that
agree with them,
anyway indistinguishable from actually being actually
Yeah,
misunderstanding?
I don't even know if that's coherent. Right? I mean,
the difference,
like,
the difference is that misunderstanding a person is not the same thing as misunderstanding a word. I do grant that you misunderstand moral realists. That's evident. What I don't grant is that you misunderstand the meaning of the words that they use when they express their opinions to you. You don't have any evidence for that.
how can those things come apart? How can I misunderstand the moral realist but not misunderstand what they're saying? What?
Very easy. Very trivial. How do you
How?
ever how do you ever understand someone who expresses his opinions when they don't agree with you? If someone says to me that snow is black, I know exactly what they're saying. They're saying the opposite of
Right.
what I would
I'm
say,
not
that
saying I
snow is
never
white.
understand them. What?
Okay, well then this is just one of those cases then.
This is one of the cases. This is when we say that I
Colors
don't understand a moral realist. This is the issue that I don't understand from them, right?
So you
I'm not saying
said,
that I
colors a
don't
poor
understand when they
example.
say
no,
that
no, no.
like water is wet.
I'm not failing to understand your point. Okay, you're saying that you don't understand what they're saying. I get it. I
Yes.
understand your words. I disagree with what
Okay.
you're saying because I
You
don't think that
disagree
you
that I
can.
don't understand what they're saying?
Yes, yes. I don't accept that you
So I
are
do
a.
understand what they're saying, even though for me, I'm just reporting my experiences right now. They might as well be saying blah blah blah, and you think that I understand what they're saying. Okay.
Yes, I think
Okay.
the reason that you have that experience is because
Uh-huh.
you're assuming that they could not have the beliefs that they claim they have, and so therefore it must be that the word has a different meaning. In fact, the word has
No,
exactly the same, excuse me. Instead, the word has exactly the same meaning that it has for you. They just happen to disagree with you, which I don't
no, no,
think you
no.
can
Hang on,
accept.
but I already refuted this, right? If they have the same meaning that I do, they're plainly contradicting themselves in the same way that they might say that water is
If
wet
it
and
were
not wet,
plain,
right?
then we would see it too, but
Right,
we
and
don't.
so they're not saying that. That's not what they're. So they don't have the
But
same meaning as me,
alternatively,
because
there
that's the
is no
meaning that
plain
I have.
contradiction. Well, okay, look, you don't. I
There
get
is a
that
plain
you.
contradiction given the meaning that I have, right? So I don't
I
know.
know. I don't know. That has not been
Okay,
established to me. I don't
I
see a
already told you what I
contradiction
meant
at
by
all.
it in plain English.
Look, I'm not saying that you haven't told me what you mean by it.
Okay,
That's not in
I'm done
dispute.
with
You don't
this.
need
Sorry, I'm
to. You
done.
don't need to.
Someone
This is
else go.
just annoying
Okay,
contrarianism.
This is just a waste of my time. I'm
I
sorry.
agree that it's annoying contrarianism. The question is who's the contrarian. But we'll let that go. The question is whether uh, you can establish that it has a different meaning if you don't understand the meaning. That is,
Holy
you can know
fuck,
what you
Rodrigo.
mean. Oh, excuse me, I'm
That
not
was
done.
the point that I
Excuse me,
was
hold on a
making
second,
in
one
the
second,
beginning.
please.
Okay,
One
no,
second,
you
please.
are done because you just keep
I
rambling
am
on
I
and
am
not actually
certain that you
addressing
made the point at the
anything either
beginning,
one of
but
us
I
was
wasn't
saying.
here
This
at
is
the beginning, and
embarrassing.
so I don't pretend
This is
to be.
wholly embarrassing to you.
I'm
I
sorry that
said
you're
from the
embarrassed,
outset to
but I'm
Darth
just
Arianis that I don't
look.
understand what he means by moral property or moral proposition that isn't mind dependent.
I'm
The
waiting for you to
definition of
finish it
that
so
word
that
in
I
my
can
head
return
means
to what I
mind
was going to
dependency.
say.
So what he's
Okay,
talking about is something completely
I'm
alien to
just
what I'm
gonna
talking
wait
about. It's
until you
not that
finish.
difficult of a concept to fucking grasp.
Okay.
How hard is it for you to not derive meaning of I don't understand this to mean I don't understand this? Obviously, Darth is not using the same word, the same meaning of the word moral as I am, because if he was, he would be overtly contradicting himself. So
Look,
he's using some other meaning of the
if
word
you
that I
think that
don't understand.
if you think the correctness of your beliefs are obvious to you, therefore they should just be obvious to everyone, then perhaps you're the one who ought to be embarrassed.
What a blatant straw
And
man.
maybe we can leave it
What a
there.
blatant straw man. Utterly ridiculous. I
Did you get
thought the
that
whole point.
clubhouse debates?
Do what?
Nothing.
Um, I, I like how the whole point of this room was to entice theists to come in here and fight with us, but we wound up just cannibalizing each other instead.
Oh, he was a theist, Rodrigo.
Rodrigo?
Yeah, he's a theist, I think.
But he never made a case for theism. He was just commentating on my psychosomatic state of affairs. Like that, I don't understand the point of that argument. I